They considered it.
Okay, everyone, welcome to our second lesson in how Judaism's universal values can help us build better lives and societies. Okay, now in this lesson, we are going to deal with an important question. Is morality obvious? Um, and people think it is. But let's do a slight review of lesson one. One of the foundations we set was that Judaism has a personal framework that applies to the Jewish people. That's the 613 mitzvot. And then also has a universal framework that applies to all the nations of the world. That's called the seven mitzvot or the seven Noahide laws. Why is it called the Noahide laws? Because it applies to all descendants of Noah, which is all humanity. And yet, who is the father of the Jewish people? Not Noah, Abraham. Why Abraham? Because Abraham modeled care for everyone, versus Noah was righteous relative to his generation, but he was all about perfecting himself and staying pure for himself, but he wasn't really too interested in what others have to feel. Something I didn't mention last week, but is important to know, that Abraham goes through a name change. In the beginning of his life, he's Avram. At the end, he's Avraham. So he gets a little hey, that little H sound. Abraham instead of Abram. What's the difference? It's just a letter. But the Torah tells us the difference is he a father of a family? That was his original name, Avram, an exalted father. Or is he Av Hamayim Goyim? Is he the father of nations? And that's interesting. When we say Avram, he's the first Jew. Not what does he have to do? He's not the father of nations. He's only the father of the Jewish people. But his concern was with the whole world. He cared about everyone, even people that weren't part of his tribe. Right? And that's what made him special. And that's the unique Jewish responsibility that although we have a side to us that we do care about our own and we do look after each other, but we also have that universal responsibility to care for everyone. So we had the seven Noahide laws. Last week we explored the first two, which was the belief in God and one central creator with one divine purpose, not competing sources of power. And there's not, money is a source of power, and celebrities are a source of power, and politicians are a source of power. And I have to pay off everyone, I have to God is God. I have to pay him off with Torah and mitzvahs. I have to bribe him so he's nice to me. Then I also have to bribe, my boss so he pays me. And then I also have to bribe culture so people like me. All these different gods that we have in our lives. And they're all types of idolatry. Even doing mitzvahs to earn God's favor is a very subtle, subtle, subtle type of idolatry, right? Because you're looking to God as a ATM instead of the all-encompassing power of the whole entire universe, right? And then we explained why anger is a type of idolatry because you recognize you think other people are a power in your life, and you don't recognize that everything comes from Hashem. And then we also explained that the second commandment, cursing God, it's a reflection of the inability to see that everything that God does is good. And so, in a way, it's a type of idolatry of the mind, where it says, whatever makes sense to me, that's what is. My sense of reality is what determines what is right and wrong. And if I cannot understand how this tragedy that happened is really good, it must be that it's not good. That's how humans operate. I'm the barometer of what is a good thing and what is not a good thing. And if I can't figure it out why it's good, then it must not be good. So therefore I could curse God. Well, the truth is that if you go to a 3-year-old and Uncle A gives him a toy fire truck that lights up and makes noises, and Uncle B gives him $100,000 tuition check for his college fund, which one would the kid appreciate?
The toy.
The toy truck. He'd be thrilled. I love Uncle A. Uncle B gave me a piece of paper. Does that mean he's right about who sacrificed more for this child and who's giving more to the kid? No. And yet, us as humans, we do it all the time. We determine that my sense of what's good and not good is ultimate decider. And so, as Jews, we act like Abraham and Moses. We challenge God. We argue with God. We say, God, I don't understand. Why did you do this to me? Why do you make it painful in my life? And then we say, but at the end of the day, you're God. And I know you have a good plan for me and that everything is good in the end. And so that's God gave us a mind to reason, to question, to challenge, but it's not the ultimate. It's not the deciding factor. Whatever makes sense to me, that's how I lead my life. If it doesn't make sense, then no. So that's just going back a little bit of lesson one, but I think it's important we reviewed a little bit of lesson one so we could go on to lesson two. Okay. Let's take a look at Maimonides describing the seven Noahide laws. So we're text one, we're on page 47. Sophie, if you could read for us.
Get something.
Page 47.
A pious Gentile is defined as one who commits to following the seven mitzvot and is meticulous in their observance, and they do so because they recognize that they are God's commandments to the descendants of Noah, as subsequently written in the Torah and relayed by Moses. A pious Gentile has a share in the world to come. If, however, a Gentile observes these laws simply because they are sensible and dictated by logic, they do not have the status of a resident foreigner and are not reckoned among the pious Gentiles, but rather from their wise ones.
Okay. So we discover here a non-Jew who keeps the seven Noahide laws because it is God's command. He's considered a pious Gentile, and he has a share in the world to come. In Maimonides' view, the world to come means the afterlife. Just like Jews go to heaven, Gentiles go to heaven too. Okay. But then he says, if he observes these laws, that means he believes, he doesn't curse God, he doesn't worship idols, and he doesn't steal, and he doesn't murder, and he has social just courts, and he's kind to animals, but he does it because it's sensible. Then he's not a pious Gentile. He's not pious. Maybe he's one of their wise ones. There's an alternative reading to this Maimonides, because Maimonides was written by text, and in some printed versions it said, and neither is he a wise one. If he keeps all the seven Noahide laws, but not because God commanded it, he's not even wise. He's a fool. So let's try to examine this for a moment to try to figure out why can I use my brain? What's wrong if I use my brain to determine what is right and wrong? In other words, where does morality actually come from? And you think about it, don't murder, don't steal, don't kill. It's so basic. We need God to tell us that? Why do we need God to tell us? What's wrong? Like, we would figure this out on our own. If God didn't tell us, we would kill and steal and we would do that to each other. We might do it, but at least we know it's wrong. So we're going to have a conversation about how do humans know what's right and wrong. And to do that, we're going to skip question number one and we'll go to exercise 2.1, okay? And this exercise asks you to imagine you're standing on a beach. To your left, a person you do not know is drowning. To your right, your family dog, the one you grew up with and deeply love, is also drowning. You can save only one. Whom do you save? For this exercise, ignore how others might judge your choice. Assume no one will ever know what you decided. Is the answer, I'd save A, the dog, B, the stranger, C, it's a matter of personal choice, D, it depends on something. So I ask everyone to silently choose their choice and to provide their reasoning for their choice. Did everyone make their choice? Raise your hand on Zoom if you made your choice. Okay. Everyone in the room made your choice? Sophie, you made a choice?
So,
Okay.
it's a very hard question.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Very hard.
Marianne, you made a choice?
If you have a dog or you have a dog.
Well, assuming it's your family dog, that's part of the
Okay.
example. Assuming it's a dog you love and know. You know the first name basis of the dog. And you know the dog would sacrifice his life for you too.
Okay.
You know.
Can I make a choice? These four,
Well, it depends. Probably it's D, no? What would be your choice?
something to do, well, should I say it?
Yeah, you could say it.
I wonder if I could figure out a way to save the dog and the street.
No. You can only choose one.
You know?
You can't save both. You got your choice. Okay. I'm not going to ask anyone to share their choice, although it might make the class very interesting. But we're going to come back to this, okay? This question was actually taken from a newspaper. A journalist actually sent this out to a whole bunch of newspapers throughout the world, and different people answered, and he was trying to make a study of, how people answer this question. Now, look at the United States Declaration of Independence. We're coming now on 250 years. And how does it open? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So these truths are self-evident. In England, there was a periodical magazine called the Gentleman's Magazine. It was created in 1731, and that's where the title magazine came to cover that genre because of the name. It was called the Gentleman's Magazine, and so all other magazines were called magazines because of that. Okay, so this was a very famous journal, and what did it say? We hold, they say, these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. In what way are they created equal? Is it in size, strength, understanding, figure, civil or moral accomplishments, or situation of life? In other words, it's questioning, what a dumb founding document. Self-evident, it's not self-evident at all. All men are created equal? No, they're not. Yeah, people that are smarter, people that are born in different. What do you mean people are created equal? It's not self-evident at all. So you just made up that something's self-evident, but it's not self-evident. It's actually not. And so it's funny when people are very strongly convinced that their morals are very deeply rooted, and what they know is good, and that good and bad, right and wrong is obvious. And actually, it's very far from obvious. Anyone want to share something before we continue? Okay. So let's take a look at three common authorities of ethics. When people say, we're going to go to Mars, we're going to establish a new constitution, and what should it be based on? How do you determine what's right and wrong on Mars? Some say we should build it on logic. We should build it on logic. But there's a problem with logic. Logic has to have a premise. And then logic can help you figure out how to apply that premise or how deep the premise goes. So, what's an example of a premise that you have to know? For example, you have to decide what is the purpose of humanity? What is the main purpose? What is the main goal? Logic can help you debate how to best achieve that goal. But if you don't have a shared understanding of what the goal should be, then logic won't help you get there. So, for example, if you decide, you know what our premise is going to be? Our premise is going to be human happiness. That's the premise. The premise is what creates the most human happiness. And then you can have logic argue it out. Well, short-term happiness or long-term happiness? Oh, there's conflicts, there's this, there's that, so you argue it out. But you have to have some premise. Who gets to decide what the premise is? Who decides that happiness is the ultimate goal of life? Maybe success is the ultimate goal. How do you know?
How do you find this
Logic.
success?
What?
How do you define success?
How do you define this? No, so logic could argue, how do you define the success? Exactly. But you have to have a premise. If you have a faulty premise no matter how wise you are, the faulty premise would lead to bad outcomes. So let's take a look at the figure 2.1 on page 51. Here we have historical cases where they had a rotten moral premise, which lead to a resulting moral conclusion. So, for example, the Nazis in Germany, they decided that human worth is determined by race and biological fitness. That was their premise. Now go argue. They said it's self-evident. We've been learning the sciences of Charles Darwin, and we know that survival of the fittest is the most important evolutionary thing, and so that's important foundation, and that led to eugenics, forced sterilization, and genocide. Were these a wise, cultured people? Certainly. Many of the scientific breakthroughs of the 20th century are the Nazis. You know, the fountain of the Nazis, right? But if you have a rotten premise you have rotten moral conclusions coming out. The chattel slavery. Some humans have no rights. Some are property rather than moral equals. And that led to systemic cruelty and lifelong bondage. The French Revolution. What was the rotten moral premise? Political purity overrides moral limits. So that led to mass executions and state terror. So Stalin and Soviet Union. Individuals are expendable for the collective and future utopia, which led to purges, gulags, famine, and mass death. Imperial Japan. National and imperial supremacy define moral worth. What did that lead to? Atrocities against civilians and prisoners of war. In societies that exist today that are based on an honor culture, family or tribal honor outweighs individual life, honor killings, and sanctioned intra-family violence. So if you have logic, does not cut it. Logic is not a way to build a just society. Because if you don't have the right premise, then you have bad outcomes. How about conscious? Wouldn't you agree that everyone is born with a feeling of right and wrong? No? 95% of people in the world are born with a conscience, except for psychopaths. Everyone else has a conscience. They know that something feels wrong and something feels right. But is this a good basis? Unfortunately not, because a conscience is born. You're born with a conscience, but the meaning of that conscience is learned. As the expression goes, one person's terrorist is someone else's freedom fighter, right? What you consider right and wrong is based on feelings. So one person says, what's that person that stole from the rich to feed the poor? Robin Hood, right? Robin Hood's a hero. Another person says, no, Robin Hood's a scoundrel. What kind of society is that? Everyone is making their own feelings. Whatever I feel feels right to me, it feels wrong to me. Then you have a person that shoots a healthcare executive in the street and is being celebrated. Because, yeah, I also once insurance didn't want to pay my medical bills. So this person's a hero for killing an executive. That's based on conscience. These people, they have a conscience. They think this is justice. They think this is fair. murder in the street,
Like, my.
believing that people think like that.
No. I'm living.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, I have a hard time believing. Yeah, you can be radicalized and desensitized, but I feel like there's something wrong. Maybe I'm not understanding fully what you mean by conscience. Like, to me, conscience is an innate belief, understanding of what's right and wrong, and that should be static. And I think that if there's something, I don't know.
There is an innate feeling that certain things are right and certain things are wrong. That's what people have innate. But what is considered right or wrong is very mushy. It's based on what you pick up, what you're watching in the media, what you're watching on TV, what you're watching in the news, and that could shape. So it's very malleable. What's considered right or wrong, right? They say, so consciousness is deciding to base morality based on human conscience is a very flimsy foundation. Logic has no foundation. You need to put in a foundation. Logic is a powerful tool. But if you put in a bad foundation, logic will take you to a bad outcome. Conscience is so wishy-washy, it could change from morning to evening. In the morning, what you felt was good. In the evening, you could have a different opinion. Why? Because in the morning, you woke up with a good sleep. And by the end of the day, your boss said some nasty comments. And now you're in a bad mood. So now your conscience changed. It's so wishy. It's so flimsy. How about, why don't we look to what society has to say? Let's look at the common shared understanding. The common shared understanding is based on logic and consciousness. And if it's a flawed logic and conscience, so then you have just an aggregate flawed society, which changes from today to tomorrow. 60 years ago, they said polygamy is a bad idea. And now 60 years later, they're saying, oh, it's a good idea. Polyamory is a beautiful idea. And then in 60 years, they'll say animal to human marriage is a good thing. And then they'll say, no, it's animal cruelty. And then it switches back and forth, back and forth. And the problem is, just because a majority agrees doesn't mean it's right. And you could have the tyranny of the majority. It says in the days when before Mashiach will come, the leaders will have faces like dogs. So one of the commentaries say, what does it mean the leaders will have faces like dogs? When someone is walking their dog, to someone looking from afar says, wow, the dog is leading, right? Because the dog is in front. But the dog is always looking behind. What does my owner think, right? And the leaders of the generation before Mashiach will be like that. Instead of leading the generation, they'll constantly be looking behind. What do my voters think? Instead of thinking what's right, they're thinking what's popular. That's the leaders we have. And that's why we have a society the way we do. So we need a higher source. We need a foundation, a principle. God created the world and God set the rules. And these are the rules he gave us.
Mommy, I want a cookie. Can I take one?
No, we'll all have some after dinner
Why can't I just take cookies right now?
because those cookies aren't yours and we all live together, so we have to be fair.
Why not be fair? Why can't it just be mine? I'm hungry.
Because people would get upset. Wouldn't you be upset if Ben or Sarah ate all the cookies?
Yes, I'll literally cry.
We don't get people upset for no reason, do we?
What if there is a good reason? Like eating a cookie is a good reason.
It's just wrong.
Why is it wrong?
Because it just is.
That's not an answer. Why?
Okay, let's try this again. People matter, so their feelings matter.
Why do people matter?
People matter because they're human beings.
Says who? If I don't agree that people matter, can I take the cookies?
No.
Why not?
Because I said so? Okay, fine. You want a real answer? It's because then nothing works anymore. If people don't matter, then fairness doesn't matter. Rules don't matter. Then the whole idea of mine and yours falls apart.
So it's not a real rule. It's just to make things work?
Asking why about everything can be fun, but at a certain point, we need to accept some rules, even if we can't prove them.
Like what?
Like that people matter, that hurting someone needs a good reason, and that you can't just decide that fairness doesn't count.
So it's like the rules before the rules.
Exactly.
But wait, who makes those rules?
What do you think the point of the video was trying to make? I think I was trying to make that, we have all these assumptions about what's fair and just, but they're just assumptions. And we always have to check ourselves. Are they really based on that this is what God decided? And if not, then they're just make-believe. They're just playing house. I agree this and you agree that. And what if I don't agree? And so then there's no order. There's no justice. There's no really right and wrong. So let's say there was a famous theologian. His belief was that really there's no such thing as theft. It's just if everyone stole from each other, because no one has inherent property rights. No one could own things. How can you own things? You were just born yesterday and all of a sudden you own things? No one owns things. But for the sake of getting along, we agree to make it look as if you own this and he owns that and he has to pay him if he wants to take it. But no one really owns things. And so there's no such thing as really stealing. It's all just play. Well, what does the Torah say? No. When you do that, then all of a sudden you can lead to all these justifications. Like it's anyways not his. We're just doing it for good reasons. But what if those reasons don't apply? Then I could steal. Let's take a look at. Let's skip ahead and then we'll come back to text 3. Let's take a look at text 4a. Text 4a, this is from the Code of Jewish Law as codified by Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi in the 1700s, page 57. Okay, on the bottom in English, Joe, you can read for us text 4a.
It is forbidden to rob or steal anything at all, according to Torah law, whether from a Jew or from a non-Jew, whether from an adult or a minor. This applies even if the non-Jew caused pain to the Jew, even though an amount worth less than a pruta, a tiny coin of minimal value, the smallest unit that Jewish law treats as legally significant money, is not classified as monetary property and would not obligate formal repayment. Taken even that amount is still prohibited from the outset. Even someone whose life is in danger and who needs to take another person's property in order to save themselves from death may only take it with the intent to repay. For although all prohibitions in the Torah are set aside in the case of life-threatening danger, except for idolatry, forbidding sexual relations, and murder, it is forbidden to save oneself with another person's money with the intention of being exempt from payment. Rather, it must be taken with the intent to repay when one is able, since repayment is possible. Even taken with intent to repay is only permitted in the face of life-threatening danger. But when there is no such danger, it is forbidden, even with intent to repay, with something better than what was taken. This includes taking for medical treatment of an illness that is not life-threatening, or to save oneself from an oppressor who is causing physical suffering that is not life-threatening. It is forbidden to steal on condition of paying double compensation?
This whole list over here is only based on the premise that God says that people can own things and you're not allowed to take it. You're not allowed to cross that line. If it wasn't God who said it, then I could find the justification for all these things. What do you mean? This person needs medicine. Of course he can steal from the pharmacy. He needs medicine. No, you can't. But he's going to pay back more later. Is it life-threatening? If it's not a life-threatening case, then no, you can't. But all these justifications. I'm only stealing a teeny amount. No, you can't. See, so we think it's logical that you can't steal, but it's not true. Most people believe you can't steal, but then they have all these justifications and exceptions. Oh, I could steal in that case. I could steal in this case. I have a good reason. I have a good motive. I have a good agenda. I'm going to pay it back extra. All these rationalizations that come when we don't believe, we don't have a foundation that God sets the rules. Let's take a look. Let's go back to text 3 on page 55. Okay? Mariam. Yeah.
The Ten Commandments bring together two foundations that at first glance seem worlds apart. The opening commandments, I am your God, you shall have no other God, and so on, express and reveal the deepest truths of God's oneness. The others, by contrast, deal with seemingly simple rules like do not murder and do not steal, principles that appear obvious even to ordinary human understanding. But the truth is that if moral laws, even those that seem self-evident, are left to human reasoning alone, without their divine foundation and authority, human judgment, driven by self-interest, can twist them beyond recognition. An outright transgression can end up being rebranded as a mitzvah, interpreting do not murder and do not steal from the standpoint of personal benefit. Many nations and countless individuals have managed to justify their most horrific goals, not to mention excusing the means used to achieve them, as has been tragically demonstrated, especially in very recent times.
Okay. So you might think God has one moment, he's revealing himself to a whole nation, 3 million people. He has very little time. What's he going to put in? Don't steal. Don't murder. Obviously. What do I need God to tell me that? Oh, you do need God to tell you that. Otherwise, without God as a foundation, then what could he do? You could turn murder and theft into a mitzvah. Right? And of course, the reverse is also true. What happens if God only told us, do not murder, do not steal, but God didn't introduce himself, that I'm God? Then you could turn for religious reasons, I'm going to murder in the name of religion. So you need both tablets. You need both. That's very important. So let's go back to our question we asked about the dog and the human. You could only save one. They're drowning. If I were to use logic, what would I conclude?
I would take the dog.
You would say the dog? What's the reason if you're using logic? Probably more conscious. If you're using logic, you might say what provides more benefit to more people, right? So you might say the dog provides me with compassion, but the human, well, let's see what kind of human he is. Is he a human that's about to die anyways? So he'll die 2 weeks earlier. Oh, is a human that's a celebrity? Oh, then I have to save the human. So you have logic always plays these games about rationalizing about how much benefit each one gives, and do I weigh my personal benefit more than the global benefit? My personal benefit should maybe be weighted more. So logic can't give you the correct answer. How about conscience? It can't either give you the correct answer. It depends on what you feel. If you feel, what's your feeling about animals and what's your feeling about people, you cannot come to the right answer. The Nazis, as they were gassing Jews, many of them were vegan and very proud of, the respect they accorded, they were vegan because they cared about, the pain and suffering of animals, but they didn't care about the pain and suffering of Jews and gypsies, right? So conscience is also a flaw. There's no premise that compels one to save the human over the dog. So a moral premise plus logic equals a conclusion. A rotten moral premise plus logic equals a catastrophic conclusion. Conscience, the capacity is innate, but the content is learned. And therefore, there's no objective right and wrong, only preference. And so every person makes their own decision. How about society? It's always changing and shifting. Whichever choice will avoid public outrage, that's what you'll do. Doesn't mean it's inherently right or wrong. Societal norms are always shifting. It's so the Greeks believed it's a mitzvah to kill your damaged kids, or it's just have your first kid, because all the younger kids will take away from the resources of the oldest kid, and you want the oldest kid to be most successful. The Romans, gladiator was perfectly fine. Yeah, you're sacrificing one individual, but for so much entertainment, you know.
All of this to me, it feels very like instinctual. Like you don't necessarily have time to say like, should I save that one drowning or that one drowning? I feel like a lot of that is a very like instinctual, which I also kind of think when you were saying that everyone has a conscience, like they can say that this is bad. I get that we can change that with that. Maybe it's because of my own brain. I don't know.
Right, but God has an opinion.
Right.
God has an opinion about this. And so really that's the ultimate decision, not on our instinct, what feels right.
So what does God say to do?
Oh, we're gonna see.
Oh.
Because so far in last lesson we did 2 of the 7. This lesson we're doing 3. Which 3 are we covering? We're covering theft, murder, and animal cruelty. So we're gonna answer this question by the end of the lesson. Okay? Okay. So what gives ethics its authority? Logic is no good. Conscience is no good. Societal norm is no good. It has to be rooted in what God decides. That's the ultimate. It's not what we feel is right, what we think is right, it's what God decides is right. It's helpful to know that God is good and God is loving, and that makes it easier to follow if he has a good plan, and he's the creator of the world and we'll follow his rules.
The right answer is stranger. Save the stranger.
We'll see. We'll see. Yeah. Okay. So from there, we learned that relationship with God and relationship with others. Isn't it common sense? Why did God give us 2 tablets? Isn't relationship with others why did God create 2 tablets? God could have just done the first, which is all these religious things. The second tablet is more social things like don't steal, don't kill, don't bear false testimony, don't covet your neighbor's wife. I need God to tell me that? Yes. Yes, you do. Because if you don't, then everyone makes up their own rules. And then everyone's like, I could steal that person's wife. Why? I have a good reason. That person's in a bad marriage. It's that. All these people make up their own rules. And then it's not a rule if everyone could make it up. But the thing is, people think that there is rules. Divorced from God. People really believe that there's a morality, that morality could be, you could have morality without God. People really believe this. And it's just so not factual at all. That's going in circles. We need both. So, common answers, everyone does it. What difference does it make? These are not, if you don't have God, then that's a good way of deciding what I'll do. Everyone does it, so I can do it. Everyone's sharing it on Facebook, so I could also share this on Facebook. No. God makes the rules. What difference will it make? I'm not hurting anyone. I'm going to pay him back double. No, it's not your decision to make. God made the rules, and that's the rules we follow. What does God say about it? That's what we always, that's the lesson. And this is not just for the nations of the world. This is for us too. How we lead our lives. How much of our lives do we lead based on what feels right, what seems good, logic, what makes sense? These things are so flimsy, and we give them so much weight. Our conscience, our feelings, but we always have to remind ourselves, what does God have to say about it? Let's use another example when it comes to stealing. So we already explored the case of victimless theft, but we reminded what I own has been divinely assigned to me. So I have a question. Imagine you're hiking, and you've been on a very long hike, and you're very thirsty, and your best friend lives right in the neighborhood. She's not home, but you know that if you were able to ask her, she would certainly allow you to get a water bottle from her fridge. You know for a fact she's your friend, but you just haven't have any, your cell phone battery died. Are you allowed to take the water bottle from her fridge? You ask people what they feel or what they think. Most people say, of course. It's just a water bottle, and she's your best friend. And if you told her that you didn't take it, she'd be insulted. Like, what? Of course you could take it. But when we think of what does God want? What's God's rules? You can't steal, right? So let's take a look at text 4b. That's an illustration of the big difference between whether you view a rule as God-made or social convention. One who enters another person's orchard, this is page 59. One who enters another person's orchard or garden may not pick fruit without the owner's knowing, even if the owner is a close friend who cares about him deeply and would probably be happy to hear that he enjoyed the fruit. Since the owner does not know about it at the time, taking the fruit is still considered benefiting in a forbidden way. The same principle applies in similar situations. People should be clearly informed about this because many err in this area out of lack of awareness. Now, there is situations where the person gave pre-consent. In other words, it is possible that this friend invited you into the home in the past and said, make yourself at home, and whatever you need. It's not a rule that you always have to ask permission. The rule is you have to have gotten consent at some point. You can't just assume consent because he would be happy. It might be true that he'd be happy. He has to know about it to be happy about it. He doesn't know that you're there, so how could he give consent to something that he doesn't know? Depends. If the family takes a responsibility for, it could apply to family members, but it depends on the family dynamic. If there's an understanding that the parents take care of the children and provide for them, then the child doesn't have to ask permission every time, but not every case.
So you're saying if you had a discussion with your best friend, I'm gonna be hiking in 2 weeks in your area.
Doesn't even have to be so explicit. It could be you were in your friend's house at one point and she said, I see you hiking all the time. You should come. My house is your house.
Right.
So then it's consent.
And that's like a blank check going forward?
If that's how she expressed it. If she expressed it like a blank check, then there is a kind of consent.
Okay.
But if she didn't express it that way, even though she would,
okay,
that's not enough.
Okay.
Okay. So we discussed stealing. Now we're going to go on to commandment number 4. Okay. Commandment number 4, murder. We think it's so obvious that you're not allowed to kill another human being. But is it really that obvious? Let's look at the trolley. Anyone familiar with the trolley problem? there's a train going down the rails. And there's 5 construction workers that doing repairs on the rails. And you could pull the lever and make the train go onto a different track and save the lives of the 5 construction workers. The only thing is that on the other rail is 1 construction worker. So should he pull the lever? What do you mean? You're saving 5 lives.
Why are?
What do you mean? What do you mean? You're saving 5,
But you're killing one,
but you're saving 5.
but you're using one to.
That's right. What do you think? Can we pull the lever?
But how about doing nothing? That's not.
Do nothing.
But it's
Can you
not
do
a great
nothing?
choice too.
What?
It's not a great choice also.
It's not a great choice. There's a mitzvah to save lives. And you're going to stand by. The Torah says, do not stand by as your brother's blood is being spilled. And here you're standing by, doing nothing.
But yeah, how can you say that one life is worth more than 5 lives?
Right? It's hard to argue that it's worth more.
You can't.
So you're saying it's worth less.
I'm saying
You should pull the lever.
they balance each other out, because God tells you that you can't stand by and watch people be killed, and that's what you would be doing.
But it
No
also
matter-
says not to kill. No, well, one is an active thing. You're killing someone. And one is you're stand by and do nothing. Right. Now, Roman, I have a question for you. Imagine the scenario is not that you pull the lever, but imagine you're on a bridge overseeing the tracks, and there's a fat person standing right next to you. You could push him onto the tracks, and then you'll stop the train, right? And prevent the 5 construction workers.
So it's the same concept.
Seems like the same concept. Right? But all of a sudden people are like, that's a little, who gives you the right to, maybe he should push you. Why are you pushing him? Da, da, da.
But he
Yeah.
wasn't in the original scenario.
He wasn't in the original scenario. This is the new scenario.
He
Right.
walked in.
So that's the point, all this is something just starting to change.
So what do we do? So let's learn how the Torah looks at this. Okay, the opening. We're going to look at text 5. Text 5. Okay. Text 5 on page 60. God created the human in his image. In the image of God, he created the human being. Male and female, he created them. So humans are created in God's image. Let's take a look at text 6. V'yahavta l'reacha kamocha. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Zeh klal gadol b'Torah. Rabbi Akiva taught that you should love your fellow as yourself is a great principle in the Torah. Ben Azai responded, this is the story of the descendants of Adam. On the day God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. This is an even greater principle. So what do we have here? A Talmudic debate about what is the most important principle of the Torah. Rabbi Akiva says, love your fellow as yourself. That's the most important principle of the Torah. Love your fellow as yourself. Treat others how you want to be treated. You don't like someone being nasty to you? Don't be nasty to others. You like when people look after your property? So look after other people's property. You want people to talk nicely. You don't want people to gossip behind your back. Don't gossip behind other people's back.
What if you hate yourself?
Then that's step 1. First, you have to learn to love yourself. But after that,
Okay.
even people that hate themselves, it's really out of a lot of love. It's a lot of self-absorption. Really, people that hate themselves, it really comes from, a certain deep obsession with themselves. Yeah. But good point. Good point. It's true. People that don't love themselves have a hard time loving other people. True. But his student, Ben Azai, what does Ben Azai say? No, greater principle than this, that man was created in God's image. That's the most important principle. So who do you think is right? Rabbi Akiva or Ben Azai?
Second B. Second one is just a statement.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have to behave like God?
No, we have to see others as created in God's image. Man was created in God's likeness.
What does it mean actually? Not physical, obviously.
Okay, so let's just answer a simplified answer, because Moses clearly says we all saw God and we saw that God has no image. And it's actually idolatry to believe that God has an image. So God doesn't have an image, and we're created in God's image. So what does that mean? Okay, a basic answer is just like God has infinite value, so too human beings have infinite value. Okay? A more Kabbalistic answer is that God, although God is infinite, he chooses to relate to the world in a specific way, in a masculine energy, a feminine energy, generosity, and so he appears to us in a certain way, even though he has no image. And then he created us to mirror that image so he could have a relationship with us. That's the more Kabbalistic explanation. God created an image of himself and then created us in that image so there could be some relationship between the infinite and the finite. Okay. So what do you think is more important? To see everyone as infinite value, that man is created in God's image, or to love your fellow as yourself?
Ben Azai.
Ben Azai, yeah.
Pretty close, actually.
What?
If you think about it, they're pretty close to each other.
Not really, because kind of like what the gentleman said, the first one might be stuck in that whole place with the society and the assumptions, whereas this is finite.
So if
Okay.
you think that everyone
know-
is in God's image, so that you should care about everyone in the same way.
Okay. So let's take a look at the figure 2.3 on page 62. Love your fellow as yourself, as Marion pointed out. It's a command. It tells you what to do. God created man in his likeness. It doesn't tell you what to do. It tells you what a human being is. It tells you the reason behind the command. So it's just a different framing. Rabbi Akiva says, treat others nicely. Rabbi Benazzi says it's important to know why. Don't treat others nicely because you want to be treated nicely. Treat others nicely because they're created in God's image. They have infinite value. Right? So Rabbi Akiva says, moral action based on comparison. And Ben Azai is saying, look at the human identity. Not just comparing to you, as Mariam pointed out, or as Joe pointed out, if you hate yourself, then you'll hate other people, right? And the scope, Rabbi Akiva's scope, is potentially limited because it applies most naturally to one's fellow. It says, treat your fellow as yourself. Okay, this person feels more like my fellow. That person has a different skin color. Maybe he's less my fellow, or he speaks a different language, less my fellow. Versus Ben Azai's statement is universal. Every human being is created in God's image. Right?
It feels like a higher.
And yet it seems like Rabbi Akiva didn't change his opinion. Interesting, no? Okay, let's take a look at the Mishnah. Text 7. Initially, a single human being was created. When God created the cows, God created a whole species of cows. Male, female, a whole bunch, all at the same time. When God created giraffes, a whole bunch at the same time. When God created trees, a whole bunch at the same time. When God created humans, one human. Why? Initially, a single human being was created to teach us that one who destroys a single life is considered to have destroyed the entire world. And one who sustains a single life is considered to have sustained the entire world. So that's lesson number 1. That's different than with all other creations of God. Everything is a creation of God. But if you take a leaf off a tree, did you destroy the whole world? Wasn't nice what you did to take a leaf off the tree.
No.
But you didn't destroy the whole world. There's other leaves. There's many leaves in the world. So you took one leaf.
but it does go back.
But by human life, you took one life, you took the whole world.
All.
Also, this maintains harmony amongst humanity, so that one person cannot say to another, my ancestor is greater than yours. No, we all come from the same. And 3, and this tells us of God's greatness. For when a person mints many coins from the same mold, all the coins are alike. But God mints every person through the mold of the first human, and yet no two people are alike. So it also shows us of the uniqueness of every human being. It's not that we're all infinitely the same. No, we're all infinitely different and unique. Therefore, every person must say, the world was created for me. That means that I have a responsibility because God created me unique. That means that I'm not replaceable. Someone has to do the job. God created me this way. No one else could do my job. What do you mean? There's other humans. Let them be good. No. You're created unique.
We all have.
So everyone has a unique purpose. Okay. Let's take a look at text 8. Okay, this was a letter that was who was it sent to? Mr. Arkadiusz Rybicki, president of the Council for Polish-Jewish Relations Office in Poland, Warsaw. Okay. Felice, can you read for us text 8?
Yeah, I would like to add that last month, in the beginning of Tishri, we ushered in the current new year of 5752 with collaboration of Rosh Hashanah and the anniversary of the creation of the first man, Adam. Our sages of the Talmud explain why the creation of man differed from the creation of other living species and why, among other things, man was created as a single individual. Unlike other living creatures created in pairs, one reason our sages declare that it was God's design that human races, all humans everywhere and at all times should know that each of the descendants from one and from the same single progenitor, a fully developed human being created in the image of God, so that no human being could claim superior ancestral origin. Hence, they would also find it easier to cultivate a real feeling of kinship in all interhuman relationships. Indeed, through Rosh Hashanah is a Jewish festival of prayers for a happy new year, include also all the nations and the dwellers on earth. And true happiness includes everyone's peace and prosperity, both materially and spiritually.
Now, so now we have a theological basis why you can't murder. It's not just don't murder because I don't want someone to murder me. What does the Torah say? And this is after Noah comes out of the ark. Well, this is where God gives him the commandment of the 7 Noahide laws dealing with murder. I will demand an accounting for your lifeblood, for God made the human in his image. As the Torah says, you cannot kill a human being because you're killing a piece of God. Now, what do you mean? The world is also a piece of God. No. The world is not created in God's image. The world is God's creation, so you have to treat it respectfully. But it's not God's image. It's different. Let's take a look at the Mechilta, text 10. On the first tablet, it says, I am the Lord your God. And opposite, on the other tablet, it says, do not murder. I'm reading text 10 on page 66. This teaches us that anyone who spills blood, the Torah considers it as if they have diminished the stature of the Almighty. Text 11. This is from the Talmud. A certain individual came before Rava and said to him, the governor of my town said to me, go kill so-and-so, and if you do not kill him, I will kill you. What shall I do? Okay, everyone, before you look at the answer, what do you think? The governor's coming to you, kill this so-and-so, or I'm going to kill you. Why? So it says Rava.
It goes against God.
It goes against God and goes about the infinite value of every individual.
Right.
Rava said to him, let him kill you and do not kill anyone. For what makes you assume that your blood is redder than that of your victim? perhaps the blood of that man is redder than yours. Now, it's very important to realize the same Torah tells us that if you witness someone trying to murder a victim, you have a mitzvah to attack the pursuer, the aggressor. That's also a mitzvah. So you say, what do you mean? But who makes the aggressor's blood less red than the victim's blood?
So it's okay to kill in self-defense.
It's okay to kill in self-defense, even if it's not self. It's okay to kill
If you know.
if you know the aggressor is going to kill someone else unsanctioned. If the aggressor is doing something that's not allowed by Torah, killing someone against the Torah's will, then the Torah says you have a mitzvah to kill him. So that's important to remember. The Torah, Rava wasn't saying, turn the other cheek. Okay, you witness someone, let yourself be killed as long as nobody dies. Whatever. So, no. You have an obligation to stop murder. And if that takes killing, then we do that too. All it means is we cannot be the cause of murder. We cannot spill innocent blood. But to spill guilty blood, then that's a mitzvah. You understand the distinction?
So you can go to jail. It's not considered that way in society.
Well, some societies think you're allowed to do that because you're safe. It's called a good Samaritan, so you're protected. And some societies don't protect you. And yeah, you have to. Sometimes doing a mitzvah is not easy, and it comes at a cost. I mean, we know. Recently on the subway, there was someone that, right? He was brought to court for defending.
Thank you.
No? Right. Okay. Let's take a look at commandment. So we have historically, we have that equals the value. And that basically, historically, what was a human being looked at? How much does he contribute to society? So if he's a net contributor, then he has value. And that's why you could have doctors today who'll say, this patient, he's a drain on the healthcare system. Because he's anyways only going to live another few more weeks. And meanwhile, we're pumping him in all this medication and he's taking up a hospital bed. And meanwhile, insurance has to pay for it. Is it worth it? That's historically, and even today, that's how many people are thinking. They're not realizing that every person is created in God's image, and you have to protect human life at all costs. You cannot put costs into the equation. And you cannot say, what do you mean? We're saving more lives that way. Because if we take his bed, that's almost equivalent to saying, this person came in for a burn on his finger, but we have all these sick people in the hospital. Wouldn't it be beneficial if we took his heart and gave it to this person and his eyes to that person? We'll save 20 lives. That's this. But for us, what do we know? A human being has infinite value. So back to the original question, the trolley question. Can you pull the lever to kill one, to save 5? No. You're not allowed to. You have to stay passive. Because infinite is just as infinite as 5 times infinite.
So we do nothing?
You do nothing. You do nothing. Sometimes there's a reverse, you could save one group. Which one should you save? Then you save 5 over 1. Right? In other words, not pulling the lever, right? But you have time either to run to this track and pull one person off, or run to this track and warn them and get 5 people first. So in that case, okay, then of course you go for more lives. Because 5 infinities in that sense is worth more than 1 infinite. But to actively kill, to cause the death of one, you're not allowed. We did a course earlier this year, fascinating cases in rabbinic responsa. And we had the case of the person in the Holocaust that asked the rabbi that my son he was selected, and I could bribe the capos to release my son, but they'll take another son in his place. Or I was like, you can't ask me this question. I don't have my books, and I'm deranged, and don't put me to this question. Horrible questions. So that's a more complicated, very tricky question that the rabbi refused to answer. And the person took it as, then I'm not going to save my son because I'm going to cause the death of another Jewish boy. Yeah. Okay. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at scenarios that are not direct murder, but are an offshoot of this prohibition and fall under this category. Let's take a look at text 12 in the Talmud. A teacher taught before Reb Nachman bar Yitzchak, one who shames another in public, it is as though they have spilled blood. Rabbi Nachman responded, you have spoken correctly, for we see that the face of the shamed person loses its redness and becomes pale. So literally the blood does spill from his face. Do people see it like that?
No.
People, no. How many people, to get clicks, get more likes, will embarrass someone publicly. They'll make you, what?
It's the whole purpose of TikTok.
Yeah. Let's take a look at text 13. Okay, this is, okay. Let me give some background to this, okay? A man who divorces his wife, and then afterwards, after a few months, they're like, it was actually a mistake. We want to get remarried. So is he allowed to remarry her? The Torah says, yes, he's allowed to, and in a way, it's a mitzvah, unless she got remarried in the meantime and got divorced. Once she got remarried and got divorced, now she's not allowed to remarry the first husband. She has to find a new husband. But as long as, what? Whatever, for another topic. But as long as she didn't remarry another husband, she can always remarry the first husband, unless the husband was a Kohen. If the husband was a Kohen, then a Kohen is not allowed to marry a divorcee, even his own divorcee. So if he divorced her, they're not allowed to get remarried. Now the Talmud says that a Kohen is a hothead. They do things very on impulse. So they had this. So someone came up with this concept. You know what we should do? When a Kohen wants to get a bill of divorce, we should write a line and then fold it and then tie it and then write the next line and then fold it and then tie it and then write the next line. This will cause, instead of the bill of divorce taking 20 minutes to write, it'll take an hour and a half to write. And maybe in the meantime, the Kohen will calm down and he'll say, I'm being a little rash, and, reconsider. Now, Rabbi Yehuda did not agree with this idea. He felt there's too many risks. You end up slowing the writing, but you end up making it so complicated that you could actually make a bad bill of divorce, which could lead to more problems. So he wasn't a big fan of this. So let's read the text. A tied document was brought before Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. He exclaimed, this document has no date. If it doesn't have a date in the bill of divorce, then it's not a kosher get. His son, Reb Shimon, replied, perhaps the date is hidden within the tied folds. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi opened the document and saw that the date was indeed written between the folds. He then looked at his son with disapproval, for he opposed the use of tied documents. Reb Shimon protested, I did not write it. Rabbi Yehuda Chaita wrote it. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi responded, turn away from this kind of malicious speech. What was Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi telling him? You just shamed somebody to save your skin. You should have accepted my disapproval of you, and I would have had a wrong assumption about you. That's my issue for not judging you favorably. But you shouldn't have, on your part, throw someone under the bus to get yourself out of a tricky situation. I can so relate to the son. Someone is maligning you for something that's not in your fault. Someone thinks a bad thing about you, and the Torah actually says it's a mitzvah to make sure people don't think bad things about you that aren't true. because not at the expense of somebody else. It's a mitzvah. You're not allowed to do things that will create, people will think you're doing something evil, even though you're doing it completely kosher and legitimate, but you're just creating the impression in others is not okay. But at this here, he's doing it at somebody else's expense. He knows his father's not happy with him. You think your father's going to be happy with the Chaita? It's interesting that the Talmud put Rabbi Yehuda Chaita's name. At the end of the day, there is some, we throw him under the bus, but the lesson's still there. Okay. Now we go on to okay. Okay. Fine. So I missed some important slides, but the idea is there. Okay, so we have the trolley problem. You could you could save 5 people's lives by pulling the lever and killing 1. What do we say? What's the conclusion of what we learned? You're not to pull the lever because every person is created in human beings. That's not how society looks at life. People look at life on utility. How much value does this person have? So therefore, you could say, I'll save the young kid over the old person. Or I'll save the dignitary, the celebrity, the president over this, what does the Torah say?
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
So when the Constitution says all people are created equal by God, so it's true. It's not self-evident at all, unless you believe that God created every person. So if you believe, we the people believe in God, and therefore we believe that all people are created equal. But if you take out that part, so that's why people, in the Constitution, it doesn't say there's a separation of church and state. It doesn't say that. One of the certain writers of the Constitution believe that there should be a separation. It doesn't say that. But because of one of the amendments that have a clause separating, that there shouldn't be any religion forced down. There shouldn't be a state religion. It doesn't mean that it should be a state absent of religion. Doesn't mean it should be atheist. It has to have one foundation, a belief in God. How you believe in God and how you worship God, that the Constitution is protecting. But that you need belief in God, we put it on our money. In God we trust. Why? Because if you don't have that foundation, then it's in the dollar we trust. So let's go on to, so secular ethics say 5 is more than 1. So of course you pull the lever. What does Torah say? No active taking of life. You cannot actively take a life. Okay? So human dignity. Why should we treat others with respect? Because they're another infinite person. And unfortunately, we don't always look ourselves that way. If we would realize that we have a soul and we have infinite value within us, it would be much easier for us to see it in others. Just like Joe was saying, if we don't love ourselves, we don't love other people. If we don't see ourselves as having a neshama, then we don't see other people as having a neshama either. Now we look at commandment number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Commandment number 5, not eating meat torn from a living animal. Okay, let's take a look at this. Okay, text 14, not to eat limb from a living animal. We are commanded not to eat a limb taken from a living creature, meaning a limb that was cut from an animal while it was still alive. One of the roots of this mitzvah is so that we do not train ourselves in cruelty, which is an especially repulsive trait. In truth, there is no cruelty greater than cutting off a limb or flesh from a living animal while it is alive before you and eating it. This prohibition applies in all places and at all times to both males and females, and this is one of the 7 commandments that apply to all the people of the world. Let's take a look at text 18. Remember we mentioned Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who told his son, you shouldn't throw your friend under the bus? So let's take a look at him. Look at this story. This is crazy. Okay. A calf that was being led to slaughter broke away and hid its head in Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi's cloak. I'm on the bottom of page 73. Crying. So the calf is hiding under Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi's cloak. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said to it, "Go, this is what you were created for." They said in heaven, "Since he did not show mercy, suffering should come upon him." And he ended up suffering for many years. ... What happened? The suffering went away as a result of the following episode. One day, the maidservant of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was sweeping the house. She was about to sweep away some young weasels. He said to her, "Leave them alone, for it is written, his mercy is upon all his works." They said in heaven, "Since he has shown mercy, we shall show mercy to him." So what do we see here? The important value that the Torah teaches, to have mercy and compassion to everything that God created. Did it say, did they accuse him? What did Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi say when the calf came under his cloak? What did he say? He said, "Go, this is what you were created for." Did they punish him for that? No, that was true. It was true. Why was the calf created? Maybe to be eaten by humans. But have compassion. Rabbi Yehuda didn't show compassion to the suffering of the animal. That was not right. That idea that God's creation can be used in a utilitarian way is true. So if you have the ability to save 5 cows instead of 1 cow, it's not humans on the train. It's 5 cows versus 1 cow. Should you pull the lever? Yeah. You see, you have there's 5 houses about to be burnt. And you could direct the fire in a different way and only destroy 1 person's house. But you're saving 5 houses from being burnt.
Are there people in
No, there's no people inside. You divert. Because God's creation doesn't have infinite value like a human being. God's human beings were created infinite value. But every creation deserves respect. One time, and that applies to plants and stones as well. It's not just about feelings. Animals have feelings.
That's what I was going to
Right?
say.
Animals have feelings.
Right.
So a human being who doesn't have feelings is in a vegetative state. You're allowed to kill him? Because he doesn't have feelings?
So we don't know whether the person who stays has feelings or not.
How about a carrot? Does a carrot have feelings? No? How do you know? Because it can't cry, it can't emote, therefore it doesn't have feelings? Maybe it has feelings in a way that carrots have feelings. Just because we don't see it cry in the way we... What?
It has no nervous system, so it should be...
But maybe it has a different way of feeling.
Vegetables have feelings.
Vegetables have to be treated with respect because they're created in God's image. You cannot waste vegetables for no reason. It's called Bal Tashchit. It's called wanton destruction.
Oh my God.
For a purpose, yeah, if it's a good purpose, that's okay. But for no reason,
Well,
it's not
what
okay.
if you open up your vegetable bin
Yeah.
and the carrots and the celery and everything
Are rotten.
are rotten,
So then you dispose of it.
but that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
But if everything is fine,
But what if you see a loaf of bread on the table and you decide, you want to juggle? Is it okay?
No. But bread is-
What about fishing for sport? Are you allowed to do fishing for sport? Not so simple. Really not so simple. What's considered a good purpose is a very gray area.
If you fish for eating, then it's good.
Oh, yeah. Fish for eating is good. In fact, that's why the fish was created. The fish wants to be eaten. No, seriously. Because it wants to be elevated to a human who's going to use the nutrition for good reason. But what if the human is not going to use it for a good reason? What if the human is going to use the nutrition to make trouble?
what if you
Then it's not a good idea to
what
eat.
if you catch the fish
Yeah.
and you then release the fish?
Well,
That's-
depends. It could be okay. It could be okay as long as you don't cause harm to the fish or needless pain. I don't know how it works. Is it possible to catch without causing
Oh,
pain?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I know. Yeah, so it says when Mashiach comes, the stones are going to be able to talk. and it says someone who's walking on the stone, going to do something evil, the stone is going to yell out, "Who gives you the right to stand on me? I'm doing my purpose. Are you doing your purpose? I was created to be a stone to help people walk. But what are you doing?" Right? Now, 100 years ago, this midrashic teaching was hard to understand, but now we see computers are talking, so it's not too far away. That AI from the stones. They're like, hey, who knows? Okay. But the Talmud says that a self-obsessed person should not eat meat. Because who gives you the right to eat meat unless what you're going to do with that energy is for good things? Right? So while the Torah allows people to eat meat, it's with intention that they're going to use the iron is going to be helpful to them, this, that. There's purpose. And yet, the Torah says you have to slaughter the animal in a very dignified way.
Right.
Yeah, the slaughtering way is very painless. The knife has to be completely sharp, no ridges, no pokes. Very strict, the kosher laws. How careful. Yeah, you're taking the life of the animal. The life is not created in God's image. But you better be eating the food for the right purpose, and the way you kill it has to be the most painless way possible.
Anyway, the book says that before Noah, humans weren't allowed to eat meat.
That's true.
So what changed?
What changed is the ability to elevate the meat, so to speak. That before, the risk was that you just become a glutton. And there's no chance that humans will use the meat for divine purpose. Afterwards, it became possible. But it says the Jews in the desert, according to one opinion, they weren't allowed to eat meat except if they brought it as part of an offering. They brought it as an offering, and the fats were offered to God, and the meat was offered. Only when they came to Jerusalem, to the Holy Land, God says, when you come into the land, then you could do it. It represents different stages of human potential to elevate the meat to its source. But yeah. And about whether Adam ate meat, there is an opinion that says that he wasn't allowed to kill to eat meat. But if the animal died on its own and it was a healthy animal, then maybe it was okay for him to eat the meat. Different traditions, different opinions. Okay. It's getting late, but every one of God's creation has inherent value. Okay, so we learn from here we need a morality anchored in divinity, which leads to an absolute worth of human life. And extending from there, all creations have inherent value. But where does it start? Do human beings have absolute worth of human life? Not if there's no God. If you don't believe in God, then it's useless to make a declaration that all people are created equal. It starts with, there's a God who created the world and created everything. And he created people in his image. Oh, so there's human infinite value, inherent value. And he also created the whole world. Also, the world also has intrinsic value. It's not infinite value, but it has to be treated with respect. Even your salad has to be treated with respect. The sixth Chabad Rebbe, when he was a young boy, he writes in his memoirs, he was walking with his father, and his father was teaching him how God is creator of the whole world, and God's energy is found everywhere. And there they were walking by, and young Yosef Yitzchak took off some leaves off the tree, just pulling by habit. His father looked at him and he said, "That's the opposite of everything I was just teaching you. Everything has to be treated with respect. They're God's. You don't just pull it for no reason. For good reason, yeah. But for no reason, yeah." Okay. So, when Rabbi Akiva said, "Love your fellow as yourself," it's a call to action. Ben Azai is telling us the why. What's more important? According to Ben Azai, the why is most important. Because at the end of the day, the action is limited by, which person feels more like your friend and this and that. But Rabbi Akiva stuck to his position. You know why? Because sometimes we could go to a whole class and learn all these big ideas, but when our coworker is annoying to us, all the big ideas go out the window. And so Rabbi Akiva says, Forget about the big ideas. Be a good person. Don't believe in the goodness of people. Just be kind to other people. That's the most important thing. So let's watch the key points video.
Lesson 2. Is morality obvious? 1. The Torah teaches that morality must come from a source beyond human reason, emotion, or agreement. Without belief in God as the authority behind ethics, moral rules become unstable and can be reinterpreted or overridden when convenient. 2. Logic, conscience, and social consensus can explain moral feelings or patterns of behavior, but they cannot establish why an action is objectively right or wrong. These approaches lack a stable standard for moral judgment. 3. A God-based moral system introduces absolute property and ownership boundaries that cannot be negotiated away by logic, emotion, need, or social benefit. The question is not, does this make sense, or will this help? But did God draw this line? True morality starts where human reasoning would otherwise excuse crossing it. 4. The prohibition against murder rests on the Torah's understanding of human value. Human worth is not granted by society or earned through ability, but given by God through the divine image, making every human life absolutely and equally valuable. 5. Murder is an offense against God himself, since it diminishes his presence in the world. For this reason, it cannot be justified by numbers, benefit, or even claims of self-preservation. And this logic also extends to public humiliation, which the Talmud equates with spilling blood. 6. The Torah extends value beyond human life to all of creation, requiring compassion toward animals while maintaining a clear moral hierarchy.
But let me just address, just a way to crystallize what we learned in this lesson. If you have an animal that's suffering, your pet is suffering, do you think, option A, it is prohibited to put down the pet? Or option B, it's optional? Or option C, it's a mitzvah?
It's a mitzvah.
It's a mitzvah, that's correct.
It's a mitzvah.
Because we want to reduce animal suffering. It's created, it has value. How about when it comes to human being? A human being is suffering. So you want to put it down to reduce its suffering.
You're
You're not allowed. What if he gives you permission?
No,
You're not allowed.
you're not allowed.
You're not allowed because it has inherent, infinite value.
Okay.
Right? So now we come back to our original question about you see a dog drowning and you see a stranger drowning. What's the Torah's answer? It's not the easy answer. For many people, it's the impossible answer. But it's what Hashem demands.
You save
the other human being. Even as hard as it is, this dog that would go risk its life for you versus that person that, might be from a different tribe than you. But save a life is to save a world.
I was thinking that because
Save a human life.
human life is sacred, and animal life is not sacred.
Yeah, it's respected,
Yeah.
but it's not sacred. It's not sacred in as an infinite way. It's sacred based on utility, based on how much, like if you had your dog versus a stranger's dog, then of course you could save your dog above, the stranger's dog. Yeah.
You very early on, we talked about we have a responsibility to our own, but also to the world, right?
Mhm.
What if there's people who feel like that this group of people are being persecuted and we need to save them or take care of them, do we do that to the extent of our own demise? In other words, yeah,
Right.
you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah. So the general rule, it says charity starts at home. That's the general rule. But how to balance it is actually gray. In other words, let's say you have money and either you could save the next city over from dying, or you could make sure that everyone in your city has a better pillow. So do we say charity starts at home? And well, I want to make sure everyone here has pillows, even though, and then if I have extra money beyond that, I'll save the next town. So it doesn't necessarily work that way. So there's a little bit of a balancing. There's different values. You have to consult with an expert on these very complicated things. But on a case by case, it's my brother is broke and can't feed his family, or I could donate a wing to a big hospital. Your family comes first.
What about, I don't need to be political, but what about in this idea where like there's many Jewish people who really feel this pain over in Gaza, right? And they don't see any pain on the other end, and they want to do whatever they can because it's our responsibility. They've used that.
Right.
As a Jew.
Tikkun olam. We have to save the world. Yeah.
So
yeah, unfortunately, they don't realize that it's like the expression, you put on your mask for yourself before you put on the person sitting next to you, is because eventually you're going to run out of oxygen and you won't be there to save the world if there's no self that's preserved.
So in that case, then they're crazy.
I don't want to say their intentions are good, but their intentions are faulty, misguided. Yeah. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining, and I'll see you next week. This Monday night
Thank you, Rabbi.
we're doing a Lag BaOmer barbecue in my backyard at 6 p.m. So come over to celebrate 6 p.m. in my backyard. Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer. What is Lag BaOmer? Lag BaOmer is during Passover at Shavuot. In the Rabbi Akiva had 24,000 students that died in the plague because they didn't show respect to one another. And he on Lag BaOmer, they stopped the plague finished, and he got up, he picked himself up, and he taught 5 new students, and he basically saved the Torah. And these 5 students were Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and many great leaders. Also, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the author of the Zohar, he passed away on this day, and he said, I want it to be celebrated like a wedding. So that's why people go to Meron, and so people, especially those that are more Kabbalistically inclined, they make a very big deal of Lag BaOmer. And it's just a fun day of Jewish pride and unity, and celebrated by going out in the field.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay.
Rabbi, thank you very much.
Very good.
Thank you. Sorry I was late.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good
Good
night.
night.